Part 4. Loose Ends. I stroked my hand up and down in a petting manner. I felt her soft fur between my fingers as my hand slid across her back. I never wanted to let go, and she probably felt the same way. Her crying was less desperate now that we were together at last, but much more intense from all of the overwhelming emotions that currently showered over us. Her tears dripping down on my shoulder and mine on hers. Our eyes were devastatingly red from the moisture, and our hair, they were just a mess. But I didn't care. She didn't care. We didn't care. We had much bigger things to deal with. I sniffed away some tears and looked up. Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie were crying too, but now from what looked to be sympathy, and Rarity looked like she was on the verge of tears too. Meanwhile, Applejack and Twilight both wore fake, "I'm glad for you" faces. What was the problem? Why couldn't we reunite? I put Twilight's giant and purple eyes into my eyesight, my blurry and wet eyesight. Why? Was all of that my exhausted throat could express. Twilight looked away, and I completely crushed Rarity's poker face by saying this, as she too went crying, together with Pinkie and Fluttershy. I kept stroking Rainbow Dash's neck and back, feeling every inch of her messy yet beautiful mane. While waiting for Twilight's answer, I kept saying positive and supportive comments to Rainbow, such as, "It'll be okay. I love you too. I'm sorry. We're together now, that's all that matters. Don't worry." To calm her down, but I was probably crying just as much as her. Twilight finally gathered up strength to look into my eyes again, just after wiping away what seemed to be a tear. She looked over at Rainbow Dash, then back to me. That was enough of an answer to me. She didn't want to talk about it in front of her. The explanation would have to wait for later. Right now, it was only my little Dashie that mattered. It's been 2 days since I encountered Rainbow Dash and retrieved all of my memories about her, and it's the first time in these 2 days that we are to be separated. Rainbow Dash has work to do on the weather team, and I couldn't come along. I can't fly. Rainbow Dash gave me a hug and went out the door to go home and get prepared for the workday. For a moment, it was just me and Twilight left in the library.
Well, I think I have to go.
Twilight was very uncomfortable with it being just us two, and started to walk towards the door that Rainbow Dash so recently had shut close. I ran in front of her and blocked off the door. "Where do you think you're going?" "I demand an explanation, now that it's just the two of us," I explained. Twilight hanged her head down in capitulation and responded.
Of course, I'm sorry.
She walked back and grabbed 2 chairs and put them next to a table.
Have a seat. I'll get something to eat.
I followed her simple instructions, pulled out a chair, and took a seat. Shortly after, Twilight came back with some cupcakes to munch on while she led the conversation. She sat down with a mildly sad expression and said,
What do you want to know?
"Everything. Let's begin with what happened after you took Rainbow Dash back here, and everything leading up to me being teleported here with a memory loss." I tried to sound as friendly as possible to lighten up her mood, but I'm afraid it didn't take any effect.
Alright, after we took her back, we realized she still had some memories left of you. We had to remove them as well. It was for the best. You understand, right?
Of course. Since we are from different worlds, yes. She did not belong on Earth. This was her home. Don't worry, Twilight. I'm not mad about that. I understand.
Thank you. Anyways, we also found out that the memories that didn't want to go away were the deepest. I wouldn't believe it, but her subconscious seemed to have a really deep connection with your subconscious. I assured Princess Celestia that I could handle it myself. I guess I was wrong.
She looked down into the floor for a second, and then back up to me as I took a bite of the delicious cupcake.
I looked all over, and when I finally found a spell that could work, I brought the gang, including Rainbow Dash. She struggled at first, but then she realized it was for the best, for both of you.
And then something went wrong that caused me to show up?
Well, yes. I knew the spell was a bit risky since it had never been performed before, but it seemed easy. It worked. Rainbow Dash had forgotten about you, but in some way it caused you to be transported here, also with your memories of her lost.
I think I understand now. I took down the cupcake from my face and put it on the table again.
What?
You said that we seemed to have a deep connection between our subconscious. As Twilight nodded, I continued with my theory. Could it be that what happened to her memories reflected on mine because of our bond?
I suppose so, now that I think about it. That could very well be it.
Her confused face came back for a last return as she asked me,
But why did you end up over here then?
why the hell was she asking me questions about this? Anyways, I did have my theory. What if we had to be in the same dimension for the spell to proceed? Twilight shone up and seemed to be glad finally.
But you were not. But since we casted the spell, I tried solving the problem itself by transporting you here near the location of the spell.
She rose up and walked over to a shelf, picking out a book using her magic.
I need to check this out. Does it say anything about the problem in the instructions?
She asked herself. I followed her movements, jealous of her magic, being able to flip the pages without even touching the book.
Here it is. No, it doesn't say anything about that here. The only negative effect listed is that the memories can be retrieved by experiencing them in person one more time.
My eyes opened up wide. I was right the whole time about that. I was very happy to finally have the loose ends being tied up, but there was something nagging in my mind. Something I had forgotten.
There. Now I've added that to the notes.
Twilight took down a quill from the surface of the book. She walked up to the table again and returned to her seat. Okay, continue, I said. What happened after you cast the spell?
Well, there was a sudden blast coming from the Everfree Forest. Your arrival, I presume?
I nodded and she continued.
Well, we didn't know what it was at the time. To us, it could have been anything. Dragon, mutant, Ursa Major, you name it.
I laughed a bit at their incredibly false theories. It was just little old me.
I offered myself to go check it out while the others went to spread the news, and have every pony in Ponyville hide and prepare for the attack.
So that's why it was so empty when I arrived.
Yes. I quickly ran over to the Everfree Forest. About 10 minutes later, I heard an incredible scream. Just a few hundred feet away from my position. It came from you. What was that, by the way?
I blushed a little when I remembered my freak out in the forest. Frustration.
I quickly found you, and then you noticed me, and our eyes met. When you yelled at me, I didn't know if you were friendly or not, so I ran away, all the way back to Ponyville. Also, I warned every pony that you were soon entering the town.
You didn't know who I was?
Not at the time, no. By curiosity, I stayed and waited for you. I just wanted to have a closer look.
I finished my second cupcake and kept listening.
Just as I thought you were not going to show up, you did! And you started to knock on doors like a fool.
Yep, just your friendly neighborhood human. Twilight looked confused. Of course, why would they have Spider-Man here? That was a dumb reference. I'm sorry, continue.
Eventually I noticed it was you. In shock, I jumped back and knocked over a barrel behind me.
That explains the noise.
You saw me, and I ran. You are very fast, by the way.
Thanks for noticing.
And everything that happened from then on, I think you can understand. I'm terribly sorry for my attack, by the way.
It's okay. People do some crazy stuff when under hard pressure, isn't that so?
Yeah, exactly.
Our conversation continued into laughter, and we talked about our own different experiences from our worlds. Twilight seemed very relieved that I wasn't interrogating as much as she'd thought me to, but eventually our joyful expressions faded away, as we moved on to the inevitable, unpleasant topic.
We have to return you to your world as fast as possible.
Twilight continued from her speech about me not belonging in Equestria. I can't, I responded sadly.
You don't belong here.
It was the fourth time she had said that sentence in her rant when I finally responded with the truth. I do not belong on Earth either!
Why not?
Why not? Why not? It was a very good question. A question I so far did not have an answer to. Wrong. I did have the answer, actually. It had been nagging on my mind ever since Sugarcube Corner. When I saw... I fell back over my chair and onto the floor.
What's wrong?
The anguish! Make it stop! Twilight flew up from her chair just as fast as I had fallen. She walked up to me, very worried.
Just tell me what's wrong. Is there anything I can do?
I'm freezing. Get me a blanket. In 5 seconds, she did so. She wrapped it around me. I was not gonna faint this time, I convinced myself. Stay conscious. Instead, I cried.
What happened? Did I do something?
She sighed in selfish relief as I shook my head. She was still worried, though.
What's wrong then?
The memories came back now. What really happened after Rainbow Dash had left my life. I promised her I would be a better man. I promised myself. I thought I would. I really did. Twilight backed off, shocked at my crazy rambling. Any time now, she would be kind enough to offer me a straitjacket. Life fell back to its normal routine. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, and be depressed. All day around, all month around, all year around. I had no sibling to turn to. My parents were dead, and I had left all of my friends behind when we moved to the countryside. I worked at an office, alone in a giant sector, alone all day. I was going crazy. I accepted a napkin Twilight offered me as I sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, crying and going insane. One more time. It was the day. 1 year after you took her away. Exactly 1 year. Twilight was counting. She came to an agreement that Rainbow Dash was exactly 1 day in Equestria until I came. I was mourning her passing away. She was as much as dead to me. Gone forever. The one and only soul I could turn to. Love. I couldn't take it anymore. I let out a giggle out of pure insanity. It was so pretty. The text. I tried really hard to make it look pretty. The letter sitting on the table. I remember every word I wrote to anyone who would make the horrific discovery. The photo album we had cherished. It was there too. The final page. The letter from Rainbow Dash. The last I ever heard of you, Rainbow. Underneath your writings, I added the small text. I'm sorry. I spoke to mid-air, pretending it to be Rainbow Dash for a moment. Twilight covered up her mouth with her hoof. Her soul had not been devastated as mine had. That's where the knife came in. The ingenious escape plan. It was there too, as the final object on that table. It was just a kitchen knife, but it was the best tool I had. I lifted the knife from its cute spot on the table. I lifted my arms up as to show how I was holding the knife. The final words I spoke before the transportation interrupted me were, I'm so sorry, Rainbow Dash. I honestly wish there was a better way to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this. But... Twilight screamed. Those words. Those exact words. Twilight was the one who inspired me, as she said those exact words when they took Rainbow Dash. It was for the best, she also said. Do you like it? I also said. Maybe I will meet you again someday. I love you, my little Dashie.
No!
Twilight screamed as I finally fainted, ending my courageous act and escaping the horrifying madness no one should ever experience. But I did, and I can't forget. I will never forget. Where am I? I rose up. I was lying on a hospital bed. For how long have I been out this time?
You're in a mental hospital. They need to erase the bad memories from you for you to be fully restored. Mentally.
Twilight's voice responded from my left. I turned my head sideways and the whole gang was there. Twilight, Applejack, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash.
Dad!
She shouted and she ran into my arms.
Careful.
Applejack objected.
He is still recovering.
It's okay, I'm fine. As Dashie and I hugged, I looked over at Twilight and silently shaped the words, "Does she know?" with my lips. She seemed to get the message as she shook her head while staring at me seriously. I understood. She doesn't need to know. At least not now. Wait a minute. A mental hospital? Am I in a mental hospital? Does Equestria even have those?
We have one. We are in Canterlot.
Canterlot? You took me to Canterlot? What if Princess Celestia finds me?
I already have.
I quickly turned my head to the right, only to be met with the ruler of the sun walking in through the doorway. Perfect fit.
Don't worry, Twilight informed me about your rather fascinating story.
I looked over at Rainbow Dash, whom didn't react. She probably thought Celestia meant my journey here, not the crazy story of what happened before. Celestia continued.
And we realized something. When we thought it was best to separate you two, we were wrong. You are family and we shall never interfere with such love. But we did, and it was wrong of us. That is why I've allowed for you to stay here in Equestria.
Tears of pure joy leaked from my eyelids as I hugged Rainbow even tighter. Thanks, I managed to say, knowing it was not even close to how much I owed them. It was silent for a few minutes before I finally spoke. What happens now? Dear Rainbow Dash, tomorrow I'm going to proceed with a very dangerous spell to erase what evil still lies inside me. Princess Celestia herself is in charge, so I count on that nothing will go wrong. But I can't help myself to ask, what if it does? So that is why I've been writing down all of my experiences with you into this notebook. If something ever happens to me, take this as proof of that I will always love you, as most of my memories with you will be written down here in the form of a story. I remember how much you used to love bedtime stories. So here's the story about us. Remember, whatever happens tomorrow, I will always love you, no matter what. Don't you ever doubt that. Make me proud. Live a happy life. If nothing does go wrong, maybe we can publish this as a book together. That'd be fun, right? Sincerely, your loving and caring father. P.S. Princess Celestia also promised me a house, fairly close to where you live, so we can hang out, but you can still maintain your private space, as you've always wanted.